Hello, it's been a year since I posted on Reddit, so thought it would be fitting to post my story along with a year update. I've fixed the grammar etc. on the first post as I was drunk. Cheers. Tuesday, October 27, 2020. I'm writing this from my phone, so bear with me if it's formatted wrong. So last night my wife of 7 years decided to have a chill-out night. After dinner, she went to the den and was watching her programs while I flitted between watching the Spurs game, football/soccer, and doing some odds and ends that I had planned. Next thing I know, she's got the wine out and has had 2 bottles of the stuff. At around midnight I went to check on her and saw she was out cold on the couch. I went to scoop her up when her watch thing buzzed and a message popped up on the screen. It said something along the lines of, "Haha, I can't do that, my name would knock 7 shades of shit out of me." I wondered what the fuck that was all about, so I pressed on it and it was a conversation between my wife and a friend of mine. Now I wouldn't say this guy is a close friend, but he's someone I've played 5-a-sides with for years, drank with and have known since we were teenagers. We used to call him Jacket Holder because when we got into scraps as teens, he'd always be the guy holding the jackets while everyone else went for it. Right, so as I said, I pushed on the conversation while this thing is still attached to her wrist, and scroll up to the top, and as far as I can tell it's him that contacts her first, unless she's deleted. There's lots of flirting and wink-winking going on, but nothing that you could outright say was cheating. Then I get to last night, and when she's drunk she starts openly begging him for sex. I couldn't believe my fucking eyes. I'm paraphrasing here because I can't remember the exact words, but she was saying shit like how much she had always wanted him, how no one would ever find out if he did want to do something, and the last one that fucking killed me, that she was great at keeping secrets. I tried to scroll through her watch but couldn't find any other messages, and I don't know her phone passcode. I put her in bed and just sat in the kitchen in shock until I fell asleep. Then I got up for work at about 5:30. When I went to get in my work van, I just slumped over the steering wheel and realized I couldn't face the day. So I went back inside, grabbed a half-finished bottle of vodka, topped it up with Coke, and went for a walk along the railway line. We live near a lot of woodlands and a disused railway line that stretches for miles. I've walked about half its length. I'm sitting under a railway bridge right now, overwhelmed and fuming about everything. You could probably see the metaphorical steam from a mile away. So what do? I don't want to speak to her. I can't even bear to look at her after reading those messages. It felt like a knife straight to the heart. It's like every ounce of love I had for her has just evaporated. Reading her pleading like that was deeply upsetting. I honestly feel like disappearing from her life. If I could, I'd never speak to her again. The part that hit me hardest was her saying she's great at keeping secrets. Who even is she? It felt so dishonest. But now the question is, how deep do I really want to go into this? To be honest, I just don't care anymore. I'm done. I've never felt so betrayed and disappointed in my entire life. The thing is, I didn't just invest in her as a partner, I invested in her as a person. I loved her so much. I believed her personality, and by extension, mine, reflected something genuine and good. To realize she's capable of this level of betrayal makes me question everything, even myself. It's like when someone you respect and look up to turns out to be the complete opposite of who you thought they were. Your entire sense of self gets shaken because you trusted and learned from that person. I know I'm rambling. Sorry. I suppose I'm lucky in one way. The house we live in belongs to my parents. 6 years ago, they moved into a retirement village and let us live here. Eventually, it will be passed down to me, though hopefully not for a long time. They just wanted a peaceful life, free from the stress of maintaining a home. So when we divorce, and we will, my soon-to-be ex won't have any claim to the house. So what do I do now? Honestly, I'm at the point where I'm thinking of just staying silent and asking her to leave immediately. While I was walking here, it crossed my mind to ask a friend of mine, who's a locksmith, to quietly change the locks today. I could make up some story about a problem with the doors. She probably wouldn't care what the excuse was, as long as I'm around to deal with it. Once the locks are changed, I'd lock the front door and ask her to come out back to check on something, and when she steps outside, I'd run back in and lock the door behind me. I know that sounds incredibly childish, but seriously, I don't know what else to do. Right now, I'm staring at a bottle, and it feels like my life has been torn apart. As for the so-called friend involved in this, there's no doubt he was part of it. And there's no doubt I wouldn't have even found out if I hadn't seen what I did. I'll be confronting him soon. Let's just say it won't be a friendly conversation. TLDR. I caught my wife trying to openly cheat on me, with someone I considered a friend, through messages I saw on her iWatch. Thank you to everyone who reached out after my first post, it really meant a lot. Yesterday, after I wrote that post and was in a complete emotional mess, 2 people walking their dogs stopped to check on me because they could tell I wasn't okay. I told them everything. They listened, and the first thing one of them said was, "Son, the worst thing you can do right now is drink. It'll only make things worse." I have to thank her. When my friend got back from work around 5 o'clock, I told him everything that had happened and asked for his opinion. I also told him not to mention anything about Jacket Holder, the so-called friend, as I didn't want that getting back to my wife just yet. I plan to deal with him later. By that, I mean I intend to expose what a disloyal and sneaky person he is. Getting into a physical confrontation wouldn't help me at this point. Just to address the people saying he didn't do anything wrong, he messaged my wife first. He was being extremely flirtatious. What is he even doing messaging my wife in the first place? He barely knows her, they've only seen each other in passing. Look, I have no issue with 2 adults having a conversation, but they hardly knew each other, and the tone was flirty from the start, at least from what I could see. I think they'd seen each other around town and things took that turn from there. My friend convinced me to lay low for now and see what more I could find out. At the same time, he suggested I speak to a lawyer and begin looking into my options, which I've done today. He dropped me off at home around 6 o'clock, and honestly, I was completely exhausted. I think the adrenaline carrying me through the day had finally worn off, and I was just wiped out. The moment I walked through the door, I knew something was off. My wife was immediately on me, asking a bunch of questions about work. I asked her, "Why do you even care?" She said she noticed I'd left my large flask and lunch bag in the front passenger seat of the van, and something just didn't feel right to her. She could sense something was up. I was about to lie, but I just didn't have the energy. I couldn't bring myself to put up any kind of act, so I simply told her, "Yeah, something is up. Last night, when I was helping you into bed after you'd been drinking, a message popped up on your iWatch. I read it, and all the others. You've been unfaithful, and I want nothing more to do with you." Her entire demeanor changed in an instant, from standing there with arms crossed like she was in control, to looking like a scared child. So much for keeping secrets, right? Begging that guy for intimacy? Yes, I read it all. She broke down sobbing, and I walked away and headed upstairs for a shower. When I came out, she was sitting on the top step, still crying, and then the excuses started. How she was drunk, how she was feeling vulnerable, how she'd never done anything like this before. How he messaged her first, how it didn't mean anything, how she was never going to actually go through with it. Pretty much exactly what many of you here said she would say. It was like she was reading from a script. The only thing she didn't do was. Let me know if you'd like help finishing this paragraph or if you want support with what to say next, whether to her, to your so-called friend, or even in legal steps. You're in a really tough place, but you've kept your head far better than many would under the same circumstances. She might have tried to blame me, but she probably knew I would have asked her to leave on the spot if she had tried to twist things around. I told her I wanted a divorce and that she needed to be out of the house within a month. I also told her she was moving to the spare room. Since then, I've been mostly ignoring her, just scowling or shaking my head whenever she starts going on about things. I don't want to hear it. She slept in the spare room last night, and I haven't spoken to or texted her at all today. If I'm lucky, maybe she'll be gone by the time I get home from work, but knowing my luck, that probably won't be the case. As for getting her out, I was explaining the situation to my parents, and my mum was completely against the idea of me forcing her to leave. She and my wife have always been close. We would have been together 11 years this December. My mum said she made a mistake and that we should work things out like adults. She said we'd been through too much to throw it away over just words, since nothing physical happened. She completely took her side over mine, and I honestly couldn't believe it. Could this complicate things for me? Do I even have the right to ask my wife to leave if my mother is opposed? It's going to be my house one day when my parents pass, and I haven't done anything wrong, so I'm not the one who should leave. At this rate, it feels like it's turning into War of the Roses all over again. I managed to book an appointment with a divorce lawyer for next week, so I'll be going to that to understand my options. Until then, I'm just keeping my distance from my soon-to-be ex-wife. At this point, I doubt she'll admit to anything more. I'll probably never know whether she was a master manipulator or just saying things to him to try and pull him into an affair. Anyway, sorry for the delay in the update, just finally had a moment to write this out after finishing work. Time to head back to what feels like a funhouse. Monday, November 16th. Hi, I thought I'd give an update since a lot of people have been sending me personal messages asking how things are going. If you'd like help drafting a message to your wife, your mom, or even preparing for the meeting with the lawyer, I can help with that too. You're handling a lot right now with a surprising amount of clarity. Keep looking after yourself. It's now been 20 days since I discovered that my wife was attempting to start an affair with someone I considered a friend, and the situation has become increasingly difficult. I gave her a month to move out, and she's been sleeping in the spare room, but it's become clear she has no intention of leaving, especially after she spoke with my mother. She doesn't really have anywhere else to go, but frankly, that's not my responsibility anymore. I've met with my divorce lawyer multiple times and am currently in the process of finalizing the divorce petition and having her served with the papers. I've also opened my own bank account and moved 50% of the funds from our shared account into it. The atmosphere in the house has been tense and uncomfortable. The living room has become a no-man's land, with neither of us spending any time there. We mostly stay in our own rooms. I've also been intentionally working late to avoid crossing paths with her. Initially, I was completely ignoring her, but after reading about the 180 approach, I've started applying it, staying civil, if emotionally distant. I'm really glad I made that change. The cold shoulder approach was making me feel like I was the one at fault, which was deeply unsettling, considering the reality of the situation. The only time I've broken from the 180 was last week, when I walked into the bathroom and found her sitting on the floor by the bath, crying. I helped her up and gave her a quick hug, more of a comforting gesture than anything heartfelt. The sad part is, I've become so mistrustful that part of me wondered whether she'd been waiting for me to walk in, just to put on a show. That probably isn't true, but that's the kind of toxic mindset this situation has created. It's exhausting. She's been insisting she'll do anything to save the marriage, desperate to prove that what happened was just a foolish mistake. So, I brought up the idea of a lie detector test. Not because I actually planned to go through with one, but because I wanted to see how she'd react. At first, she agreed without hesitation, until a few hours later, when she came to me holding her tablet, going on about how unreliable they are. She said that nervousness and anxiety can cause inaccurate results, and that her anxiety disorder would skew the test. I couldn't help but laugh, not a normal laugh either. It started off as a bit of a cackle and turned into a childish giggle. Apparently, she's willing to do anything to save this marriage, anything except take a lie detector test, that is. Let me know if you'd like help drafting a message, preparing for your next meeting with your lawyer, or handling your living situation in the meantime. You're staying impressively composed through an extremely challenging time. At this point, none of it really matters anymore. I meant what I said in my original post. Every ounce of love I had for her evaporated the moment I read those awful messages. I no longer see her as the person I once loved, the one I could confide in and trust completely. Now, I just see someone I no longer recognize, someone I need out of my life before things deteriorate even further. As for the jacket holder, he's become the talk of the town since I exposed him to our friend group a few weeks ago. It's safe to say he's been completely ostracized and has lost all credibility with the people we know. I tried calling him a few times to confront him, but he ignored me and eventually blocked my number. At this point, I'm done with him. I hope whatever he was trying to gain from this was worth the cost. I've spoken to my mother about everything, and during a particularly heated conversation, I asked her why she's taking my wife's side. Is there something she's not telling me? What does she expect? That we just continue to live together like roommates and pretend nothing happened? It's beyond unrealistic. She told me that she's always seen my wife as the daughter she never had but always wanted. My mother had a stillborn daughter before I was born, and it's something that's haunted her ever since. She became deeply attached to my wife from the beginning, and that bond has only grown stronger over the years. On top of that, my wife has no family and only a few friends, all of whom have busy lives and their own families. My mother believes it would be cruel to throw her out, especially during a pandemic, when she'd have no support system. She tried to get me to reach some kind of compromise, suggesting that we give it 3 or 4 months and revisit the situation then, see where we are emotionally and mentally. She's also been pushing for couples counseling before I completely give up on the marriage. But I'm not doing that. The thought of spending Christmas in the same house with my wife, pretending everything is fine, makes me feel physically ill. She'll want to go through all the traditions like she always does, and it'll just be a mess. My dad, bless him, has never been much of a talker. He's a quiet, proud, but reserved man, and my mother has always been the dominant voice in the house. His silence during all of this speaks volumes. Let me know if you'd like help with how to approach your mom or how to set firmer boundaries at home. You're dealing with a complex emotional web, and it's understandable that you want clarity and peace. People have been telling me that I'm selfish and entitled because it's not technically my house, and that I have no right to make demands. But at this point, it feels like it's come down to a choice between my wife or me for my parents. And if it comes to that, I'm prepared to walk out and never look back. I'm not going to cling to a house if it means sacrificing every shred of my self-respect. Someone in this situation has to stand by their word, and if no one else will, I will. If I do leave, I've got a good friend who has offered to let me stay with him for a few weeks until I get back on my feet. But make no mistake, if I walk out that door, I'm cutting ties. I won't speak to my parents again. They'll probably interpret it as me giving up or abandoning them without trying to salvage things, but the way I see it, they're choosing someone who hurt me deeply over their own son. And then what? What happens once I'm gone? My wife living there alone, with my parents supporting someone who betrayed me, while I'm out there on my own? It's unthinkable. For a bit of context, my parents offered us the house a year after our wedding. They called it a belated wedding gift, though it had always been their plan to move out and let us move in. Over the years, I've invested tens of thousands into that home, though that's beside the point now. Sometimes I imagine leaving everything behind, starting over somewhere new. But I've lived in this town all my life. It's all I know. Am I being too harsh? I genuinely feel like I'm ready to walk away from my entire family, but I'm conflicted. Why am I the one who has to lose everything and everyone? I've always tried to do right by people. I used to believe that you make your own luck, that good things happen to good people. But maybe I'm not as good as I thought. Maybe I somehow brought this on myself. Wednesday, December 2nd. Well, as of this morning, I no longer consider that house my home. I saw on the calendar that my wife had a hospital appointment with her ophthalmologist. Knowing she'd be out for a few hours, I used the time to pack my things and move out, which I've now done. After I got everything out, I left the house keys on the kitchen table, along with the divorce papers my lawyer sent me last week. Then I walked away. I've blocked both my wife and my mother's numbers. From this point on, any communication with my wife will go through my lawyer. For now, I'm staying with a friend for a week or two, but I'm hoping to secure a rental and be in my own place before Christmas. Let me know if you want help drafting messages to your lawyer, processing next steps emotionally, or handling communications with your family. You're going through a major life change, and it's okay to feel overwhelmed. You're not alone. Here is the revised version of your text with corrected grammar, improved structure, and inappropriate or emotionally charged language replaced with more respectful and composed alternatives. The emotional impact remains, but it's expressed in a clearer and more balanced tone. I haven't spoken to my parents in a few weeks. The last time we communicated was via text. I tried to explain to my mother, in clear detail, the kinds of things my wife had been saying in her messages to the other man. I wanted her to understand why it hurt me so deeply, and why I believe this may not have been the first time, especially considering comments like, "I'm great at keeping secrets." That made it impossible for me to trust her again. My mother responded saying she couldn't talk to me while I was in that emotional state and that she would give me time to cool off. A few days ago, she tried calling me, but I didn't answer. As I mentioned earlier, I've since blocked her number. To be honest, I feel more let down by my parents than I even did by my wife's betrayal. In difficult times, you look to your family for strength, for them to be your foundation and support you, especially when you're the one who's been wronged. Instead, my parents have made me feel like I'm the one in the wrong, as if I'm overreacting and tearing the family apart. But I'm not. I never asked them to do anything drastic, just to support me by asking my unfaithful wife to leave the house. They made their choice. My father also had the opportunity to take a stand and support me for once. But he didn't. Everyone makes their choices, and now they have to live with them. Just like I will. If you'd like, I can help you write a final letter to your parents or guide you on how to start healing emotionally from both betrayals. You're going through something extremely difficult, and you're allowed to feel hurt, but you don't have to carry it alone. Here is your revised text with improved grammar, clarity, and tone. Strong language has been replaced with more appropriate alternatives while maintaining the emotional impact of your message. Reading some of the comments on my previous posts, a few people have suggested that I gave up too easily, that I was looking for a way out, or that I didn't truly love my wife because I didn't try hard enough to save the marriage. But that simply isn't true. I loved my wife more than anyone else in the world, and discovering what she was doing absolutely broke me. I believe we all have boundaries, and once those boundaries are crossed, something changes, sometimes permanently. When I read those hurtful messages, something inside me shifted. It was like being snapped out of a spell in a movie. The connection, the trust, the love, it all vanished. Anything attempted after that would have just been delaying the inevitable. I do find myself wondering about the dynamic between my parents and her now that I'm no longer in the picture. Are they really going to continue supporting her, knowing that doing so has cost them their relationship with their son? As for me, I've started thinking more about the future and what I want for myself. I'd really love to travel. My wife was never keen on flying, so most of our holidays were spent in southern England, places like Newquay and Torquay in Cornwall and Devon. It would be amazing to go abroad again. The last time I traveled internationally was a trip to Greece with friends when I was 20, so 13 years ago. I've got my sights set on America now, and once the pandemic situation calms down, I'd love to explore some of the US. Let me know if you'd like help planning that trip or turning these thoughts into something more structured, like a letter or even a short memoir piece. Your story is powerful and could help others going through the same. It's been over 7 months since I first posted on Reddit, and I honestly thought that was the end of it. I had made my decisions and followed through on them, so I didn't feel I needed any more advice. But this morning, I received a phone call that's dragged me right back into everything. I've moved 15 miles away, changed my phone number, and am still in the process of divorcing my wife. Unfortunately, she's completely ignored all the requests from my divorce lawyer to cooperate, which has delayed the proceedings. We're now applying for a deemed service and trying to have her served officially through the courts. If she continues to ignore everything, I'll be able to proceed with the divorce without her involvement. This morning, while I was at work, a friend called to let me know that my dad was trying to get in touch with me. Apparently, my mom is unwell. My friend asked if it was okay to pass on my new number, and I said yes. My dad called shortly after to tell me that my mom is in hospital. She's stable, but not doing well. Hearing my dad's voice after all this time was surreal. It was also the most emotional I've ever heard him. He told me my mom really wants to see me and asked if I'd meet him at the hospital this evening so we could go in together. I agreed, and we arranged to meet outside the hospital. I ended up leaving work early because I just couldn't focus. I've been pacing around ever since, questioning if I've made the right decision, wondering if this visit is going to pull me back into the very situation I fought so hard to escape. I feel like I'm walking into a burning building blindfolded, with no idea where the exits are. Why does she want to see me now? Has something changed? Unless she's had a complete change of heart or outlook, I find that unlikely. Will my wife be there? I sincerely hope not. I have no interest in ever seeing her again. I'm still hurt and angry about everything that happened, especially the way my parents took my wife's side over mine. I keep going back and forth about whether I should go at all, but I've decided that I will. I even considered asking if she wanted to speak over the phone instead, but I'm not sure if she would be willing, or well enough, to do that. Right now, I feel like the villain in all of this, like maybe I somehow caused this by walking away. I don't know how much of that is rational and how much is just emotion. How would you handle a situation like this? Let me know if you'd like to turn this into a post, a letter, or something more formal. And if you need help sorting your thoughts before the visit, I'm here. Sorry for the late update. I've spent the past few days trying to process everything that happened and how I feel about it. I did end up going to the hospital on Wednesday night after a lot of back and forth. Honestly, I was on the verge of backing out at the last minute because I was overwhelmed with anxiety, but I knew I needed some closure. I also knew I wouldn't forgive myself if I didn't go and something serious happened. As I pulled into the hospital car park, I felt a strange wave of paranoia, as if something unexpected might happen. A part of me even irrationally feared my wife might suddenly appear out of nowhere. I met my dad at the entrance, and things were awkward right away. He tried to hug me, but I declined. I told him very clearly that if my wife was there in any way, shape, or form, would immediately leave. He assured me she wasn't, so we proceeded to the ward where my mom was staying. Seeing my mother was a shock. I'd never seen her look so frail. It was honestly frightening. She had a severe black eye and a lot of bruising and discoloration along one side of her face. She had taken a serious fall, breaking 2 ribs, shattering her elbow, and hitting her head and face on the ground, apparently in that order as she went down. The injuries made her look like she had been through something traumatic, and she seemed almost unrecognizable at first. Despite how out of it she looked, she brightened up when she saw me. She told me how much she had missed me and that she wasn't sure she would ever see me again. I told her that if she had really wanted to get in touch, she could have. There were ways. We talked for a while about what had happened, how she had been lying there for a few hours before my dad found her, and how she's determined to recover and try to mend things between us. Let me know if you'd like this prepared as a journal entry, letter, or for use on a forum. I'm also here if you want help thinking through next steps or how to navigate the emotional aftermath. I brought up my wife and mentioned that I've been trying to move forward with the divorce, but she has either been ignoring the letters or possibly not receiving them. I asked if she's still living in the house, and my mom admitted that she was. My dad started to look uncomfortable, and I simply looked away in disappointment. My mom began talking about how lost my wife is without me and how she's not in a good place emotionally. That's when I realized nothing has changed. She hasn't had a moment of clarity or started to see things from a new perspective, she simply wants things to go back to how they were. She said that the house is my home and always will be, but I told her I no longer see it that way. It holds no value for me now, it's full of painful memories. I stayed for less than an hour. When I left, I told her that if I want to get in contact, I will, but not to wait by the phone, because that call might not come anytime soon. When my dad walked me out, he asked if I'd keep in touch, and I said I would. Whether that's the right choice or not, only time will tell. When I got home, I felt overwhelmed with emotion, sadness, anger, confusion, but despite everything, I'm glad I went. I couldn't help but think about my wife and what she once meant to me. That pain doesn't just disappear. Looking back over the past 7 months, it honestly feels surreal. The way everything unraveled so quickly was staggering. I know life can change in an instant, especially when you're not paying attention, and I wasn't. It was pure chance that I discovered what she was doing. A random glance at her watch was enough to shatter everything. Now I see things clearly. I know in my heart that it wasn't the first time she betrayed me. I no longer feel love for her, only a sense of betrayal and disappointment. It feels like she stole the best years of my life. When I think back on the good times, they feel tainted, like memories from someone else's life, not mine. Let me know if you'd like to shape this as a letter, journal entry, or online post. I'm here if you need help working through the next steps emotionally or legally. My friend suggested I see a therapist or someone to talk to help me process everything that's happened, otherwise, it could fundamentally change who I am and how I approach relationships going forward. I think that's something I'm going to do because, truthfully, I do feel a bit broken inside. The last 7 months have been the most difficult of my life, but even so, I'd rather have gone through them than remained in the dark. I'm just hurt by the way it all unfolded. But I suppose you don't get to choose how someone lets you down, you just have to learn from it. I remember reading somewhere that loyalty is one of the most undervalued character traits, and I truly understand that now. Maybe it's because you don't really know if someone is loyal to you until they're not. It's not something you face every day, but this experience has shown me how incredibly important that trait is. Tuesday, July 20th. Hi, I thought I'd share an update to my previous post, as quite a few things have happened. Firstly, I'm now in the final stages of the divorce from my wife. She has signed the papers and returned them to my lawyer, so all that remains now are the final formalities. She sent me a message through my dad, saying she was sorry for holding on and not letting me move on. She said she had hoped she could fix things, but now she realizes that's not possible and that she needs to move forward for her own well-being. I appreciate her finally understanding that. She said she doesn't want anything in the divorce settlement and plans to move out of the house once she's back on her feet, which I'm fine with. As for my mother, I haven't spoken to her directly yet, but my dad told me she's doing much better since leaving the hospital and getting some sense of normalcy back. I'm not sure how things will turn out with my parents, but I've told them that if the house is intended to be mine, I'd like it to be put in my name now, to give me a sense of security. After that, we can try to rebuild our relationship. We'll see how that goes. Let me know if you'd like help writing a message to your parents or therapist, or if you want to prepare emotionally for what's ahead. I'm here for you. My biggest battles ahead are in my head, trying to process and move past everything that has happened. The brain is a wonderful yet sometimes frightening thing. For example, I can still remember the taste of the truffles I ate, and later threw up, at my grand's house when I was about 5. I've never eaten truffles since, but I can still recall the taste vividly, even 30 years later. What I'm getting at is this: I don't want to carry thoughts, feelings, and opinions about everything that's happened with me for the next 30 years. I don't want to become one of those older people who's had all the light knocked out of them by the weight of life. You hear about people like that, how they used to be kind, funny, or full of joy, but somewhere along the way, they were hurt so deeply that it forever changed them. I don't want to become that version of myself. I need to let go of this pain before it consumes me. I've started therapy and have spoken to a psychiatrist, both over the phone and in person. It's helped a lot to talk openly about everything, even if only for a little while. One thing my psychiatrist said really struck a chord. I was lamenting how I felt like my best years were behind me, and she said, "Your best years are the years you've got left." What I think she meant is that the past is gone, it only exists in your mind. But the present, the here and now, is real. And you have a choice, to make the most of what's ahead or to live in a past that exists only for you. It's definitely a phrase I'm going to keep in mind whenever I start feeling low. In one of my earlier posts, I mentioned wanting to travel, and that's finally happening. My friend has committed to joining me, and we're booking a trip to New York at the beginning of October for a week. I'm really looking forward to it. I've always wanted to see New York in the autumn, with the leaves changing. It reminds me of that movie You've Got Mail. I hope this is just the beginning of my travel adventures. I want my late 30s to be filled with memories of experiences abroad. That's the plan, anyway. All I know is that, for the first time in what feels like forever, I'm waking up with hope in my heart and a spring in my step. And if that's not progress, then I don't know what is. Let me know if you'd like help formatting this for a blog post or sharing it somewhere. You're making real strides, and it shows. Well, it's now been a year since my first post on Reddit, so I thought it would be fitting to give one last update and bring things to a close. First things first, I'm now officially divorced. It feels like a weight has been lifted, but also like a firm ending to what was nearly a third of my life. I actually saw my ex-wife for the first time since last December while I was walking into a shop in the town center about a month ago, after visiting a friend. She was coming out just as I was going in. We were both wearing masks, but I recognized her immediately and we made eye contact. She mumbled something I couldn't make out, and then we just kind of stared at each other for a few seconds before I walked inside. As I wandered through the shop, this wave of sadness hit me out of nowhere. I had to stop for a moment to gather myself. It just goes to show, sometimes all it takes is one glance to bring you right back emotionally to square one. Do I miss her? No. I miss the person I believed she was, but that person doesn't exist anymore, if she ever really did. I don't wish her harm or hardship. I truly don't. I just refuse to carry forward with resentment in my heart. The only person it hurts in the long run is me. I also recently found out from a friend's girlfriend that she believes she saw my ex-wife outside a pub in the city, a couple of years ago, being very affectionate with another man. She never mentioned it to me, or to my friend, because she wasn't entirely sure it was her and didn't want to get involved. I'm honestly really disappointed by that. Even if it wasn't conclusive, I could have looked into it at the time, found out if she was even out that night. It might have saved me a great deal of heartache. Now I understand why I never really warmed to her. Let me know if you'd like a version formatted for sharing online or as part of a memoir. You've come a long way, and this kind of honest reflection shows real growth. One of the reasons we wanted to book a flight to New York in October, apart from wanting to see the city in autumn, was that the travel ban between the USA and UK was supposed to lift in September for fully vaccinated travelers. Unfortunately, that has now been pushed back to November 8th, which has put our plans in limbo. My friend also can't get the time off work now until the new year, so if I still want to go, I'll have to go alone. That's a bit disappointing, since we were both really looking forward to going together. I'm still pretty set on going in the new year with him, though I'll need to think things through a bit more. One thing this pandemic has consistently managed to do is throw up unexpected obstacles, so I can't really complain or say I'm surprised. I'll get there eventually, one way or another. This is just the start of my journey, remember? I'm struggling when it comes to my parents, in that all I feel towards them right now is complete apathy. I'm finding it difficult to feel anything at all, and no matter how hard I try, I don't think that will change. My dad has been trying to rebuild our relationship, but honestly, I just don't care anymore. That might sound harsh, but it's the truth. In my last post, I mentioned wanting them to put the house in my name, but I haven't followed up on that. I think I was just angry at the time and wanted to assert some control at the beginning of our conversations. The truth is, I really don't care about that house. I think I'd rather live in the house from Nightmare on Elm Street than live there. Owning it wouldn't change anything. It can't turn back time, unless it somehow turned into a time-traveling house since I left, or undo the choices they made. It's just a sad consequence of everything that's happened. Let me know if you'd like help compiling all your entries into a cohesive narrative or personal blog. You're doing a remarkable job processing and articulating everything. Keep going. To anyone out there considering forgiving a partner who's been unfaithful, please don't. I sincerely urge you to reconsider. You're trying to revive something that's already gone. Don't be that person, desperately trying to put out the fires your unfaithful partner keeps reigniting. After everything I've been through, and after reading many infidelity support forums over the last year, I feel more strongly than ever that if you don't walk away, you're setting yourself up for more pain. A somewhat relevant story: at the start of the year, I had a frightening experience when I cut the back of my trouser leg on a metal bin at work. I didn't realize it had actually broken the skin. That night, as I went to bed, I started feeling really off. Around 2 a.m., I woke up with a pulsating sensation in my leg. I felt extremely ill, was seeing double, dizzy, and alternating between a high fever and chills. I knew immediately it could be sepsis. I called an ambulance. They told me it would be over 2 hours due to it being a Friday night during the peak of COVID, and my mind was racing uncontrollably. I was hyperventilating, panicking. Do you know the only thing that calmed me down? Accepting that I might actually die. As strange as it sounds, the moment I accepted that outcome, the fear vanished. I don't know if it was simply a state of surrender, but once I embraced the possibility, everything became quiet and clear. Lately, I've been thinking about that moment in the context of betrayal. I think it's a very similar emotional process. You have to accept that what you once had is over. It's long gone if someone is willing to sink to such depths and betray you so callously for their own gratification. Fighting for that kind of relationship might seem noble, but when the odds of truly repairing it are incredibly slim, is it really worth it? Is it worth the continued pain? Personally, I don't believe so. I understand that everyone has different circumstances, especially when children are involved, but some battles are just not worth the toll they take. Acceptance is what brings clarity. That's just my perspective. It's funny, I haven't written about my thoughts and feelings since high school. I work up on roofs for a living, so it's not exactly the kind of environment that encourages introspection. But this experience has brought that side of me back to life, a side I had almost forgotten existed. If there's one good thing to come out of this whole ordeal, it's that I've realized I can't keep bottling things up anymore. Writing everything down has been cathartic. It's helped me process the bigger picture of my situation more than I ever imagined. It's something I'm going to keep doing, even if it's just writing in a journal or scribbling in a notepad for myself. There are moments in life, when all is said and done, that you can look back on and say, that day could have gone either way. I shudder to think where I might have ended up if I hadn't reached out for help here, or if I hadn't run into those dog walkers. I might have ended up blackout drunk, on death's door in a ditch somewhere. Or worse, in jail after storming into Darren's, aka the jacket holder's, house and smashing through his window in a fit of rage. Honestly, it frightens me to think where I could have ended up if things had spiraled further. I was in a really bad place, and being drunk, ashamed, and burning with anger is a dangerous combination. It can cause absolute chaos, no matter how you look at it. In the end, I'm just grateful I made it through without hurting myself or anyone else. Most of my earlier posts were focused on the day-to-day details of what was happening. But I think these last few have been more about how I feel about it all. Betrayal stirs up some of the most powerful and intrusive thoughts a person can experience. There's really nothing quite like it, being hurt by people you love. The emotional toll it takes is unlike anything else. So thank you, for hearing me out. I said in my first post, after finding out the truth, that I felt like a worse person than I was the day before. But now, after everything that's happened, I feel like a stronger one too.